Welcome to PolyCast, a Civilization podcast focused on game strategy.
Dan Q.
Makalua.
The Me and Team.
QNL. With guest co-hosts.
Mega Bears fan.
More coffee.
That's right. Greetings, citizens and spies from my empire. I'm the Me and Team, and welcome to PolyCast episode 140. Today I'm joined by fellow co-hosts Dan Q.
Hello.
Makalua.
This is still too early.
QNL.
Hi.
And guest co-host Mega Bears fan.
I agree. It is also too early in the morning.
And
See,
you're all
it's not
over in
just
my-
me.
I guess this would be more night there.
Our first topic is recent interview with Game Informer's Adam Vicenter. Is that how you pronounce his name? With the one and only Sid Meier on the future of strategy gaming.
Yes, posted over at Game Informer on the 30th of January. It was about 14 and a half minutes. The interview was mostly about the future of strategy gaming, like the title suggested. Civilization was discussed, Civ in general, Civilization 5, Civilization 4, Civ 4 versus Civ 5, and one thing I have to say that I enjoyed listening to, I don't know how many people listening live or otherwise in our audience know that I was one of the founders of a Polton Civilization site in 1998, and the interviewer started mentioning Apolton and Civ Fanatics as representatives of the community, but he mispronounced Apolton's name. And I have to admit, it brought a smile that even after almost 14 years, people still do not know how to properly pronounce the name.
Well,
Apolitan?
what goes around comes around, I guess.
Polyton.
From the interview itself, for those who haven't had a chance to listen to it, I actually focused on three parts that I think have particular relevance to this show. First clip.
If the game that you like is not the game that I like, then we have a problem because I'm making the game that I like, not the game that you like. So we have to hope that there's a significant audience out there for the games that we like to make. And, up to now, that's been the case. We have a very vocal and avid fan community, and they've been a big part of our success. They've been there since Civ 1 and 2 and have contributed a lot of great ideas in content and scenarios and mods and all sorts of stuff. I mean, the community has really been our partner in the most of our games, and so far we've been able to make that connection. As long as we continue to do that, I think, we have a successful formula.
Sure. When you look at Firaxis's discography, I guess, the studio's overall oeuvre, the games have almost, in recent years, feel like they're kind of moving not backwards, but toward a more elegant sort of design. If you look at, for instance, Civilization 5 versus Civilization 4, or Railroads versus Railroad Tycoon. What's your thought on that? I guess what's the driving philosophy behind that?
Well, in a lot of ways, we can make better games today than we could make 10, 15 years ago. So we hope that the overall quality of our games is constantly improving. We're also able to take advantage of things like interface conventions, graphic richness and detail, and that we can present to the player to make interfaces better, make games easier to play, and hopefully, as you say, elegant. So we want to take advantage of everything that we have to make the games easy to play. And we can also bring the games to life in a much richer way than we could before. That's slightly two-edged sword. I used to love to try and challenge the player's imagination, to show them a few pixels in 16 colors and try and convince them that they're ruling an empire, to stand the test of time. But I think today's player is not really willing to make that investment. So, we're able to bring the worlds to life in 3D and show you everything that's going on, and you get to meet great leaders, and you get to fight aliens from outer space and all sorts of cool stuff right there on your screen. So we've been able to kind of ride that technology wave to add that new element to our games, which I think has brought new players in, because Frankly, to play games of 10 or 15 years ago, you had to kind of suspend your disbelief and be willing to step into that world. Today, we make it a lot easier with the graphic and the visuals that we can present to you. In a lot of ways, that's what's really changed about games. Game design hasn't changed as much as it might appear since the good old days, because a lot of things that were true there that made games fun still apply today.
This is true. There's a lot more shiny. Shiny, shiny, shiny. Oh, did you want gameplay with that? Oops, we spent all our budget on the shiny.
Graphics. No, I can't say that on a live show. But, yeah, a lot of games have gone that route, unfortunately, to the overemphasis on graphics. And I think Civ 5 did make that mistake to an extent just because of the rate at which it plays when you make a command or hit end turn and then you wait for the said things to happen. A little bit of an eyebrow raiser to hear the man himself mention the interface conventions. So that one is amusing to me in particular because I play the game so quickly. So
well, there is a little bit of a contradiction, though, because the thing that actually stood out to me the most in this interview was right at the beginning, where the interview asks him about designing the strategy games to conform to the demands of the I think he said Call of Duty audiences. And I was very disappointed that Sid's answer was not an immediate, why would I want to do that? Instead he gave some kind of diplomatic dancing around of, oh yeah, we have to do this and that, and, try to appeal to a casual audience, which sounded like studio speak to me. But it's a little bit in conflict with his later quote of, if the game you want to play is not the game I want to play, we have a problem.
Maybe even Sid likes the shiny now.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. That's a good catch, actually.
Yeah, it is good to hear, though, that according to him, he's still very involved in the design and development process, because I had been hearing from multiple sources that, he was just a figurehead and just a guy sitting in an office now not really doing much. So it's good to hear from him that he's still involved.
It is. And, I don't think the design, I guess you can have some things that people disagree with in Civ 5 or whatever, but I think, at least in terms of design, that's always been the Civ franchise's strong point, to be honest. When I complain about it, you almost never hear me go there. Sometimes for balance or whatever, but even the new ideas that Civ 5 put in that, were not always widely regarded, they had potential. 1 unit per tile, hexes, you name it. The way you attain research per turn, research agreements, those are all divergence from previous titles that, if they were balanced properly, could work out pretty well. Although, with the research agreements, I hesitate, just because those in tech trading are so overwhelming. But yeah, like I said, for Axis, design is really what they do well. And it's just the other areas of the game that I'd like to see improved. And of course, this being an interview between Game Informer and Firaxis, and I think Firaxis has them bought out perhaps, given the initial rating by Game Informer of Civ 5. It was like 9.5 or something. So they're not going to ask the hard questions of Sid here, and he's not going to answer them, unfortunately. But it was still an interesting interview piece.
Yeah, I feel like Sid is involved, to a certain extent, but, he hasn't been the lead game designer for, the last two major Civ titles, Civ 4 and Civ 5. That's been Soren Johnson and John, I forgot his last name, Schaefer. And what he was a lead designer for was Civ World. And, the interviewer didn't ask him about that, which is too bad, because I would have liked to see what he would have said about it. I feel like it's kind of, just how did it happen? Okay, I think everybody who's played Civ World so far that's been like a regular Civ fan has just not really liked the game enough to continue playing. It's not even good for like a Facebook game, Sid Meier were to get involved as a lead designer and come out with something with like Civ World, then maybe I want somebody else. I don't know if he's really involved in Civ anymore, at least not the flagship titles, and Civ World is just a complete disaster, and I really wish they would have asked him about it.
Shameless self-cross promotion. If you would like to hear more about Civilization World, there's the new Civcast podcast in the PolyCast family over at thepolycast.net/Civcast. That's SCIVCAST. Continuing on from the interview, clip number 2.
How do you stay engaged with something like Civ that's been so synonymous with Sid Meier for so long?
Well, Civ is such a rich topic that we have not exhausted it. I think that taking it to console, taking it different places has been fun. Emphasizing new aspects of it, the combat in Civ 5, etc. There's an incredible richness there. It's always the challenge with Civ is always what not to put in, not what to add to it. I guess we were very lucky to pick such a rich topic, but it really has been fresh now through Civ, five iterations plus Civ Rev, etc. So there's a lot to Civ, I guess, and we keep finding new things to make it interesting.
Is it ever hard to hand that off to somebody like Soren Johnson or John Schaefer, right, to a new lead to really put their own stamp on the project?
No, I think that's what it needs. I think that when I do a Civ game, that's everything I know about Civ at that moment in time. I haven't left something out for the next Civ version. So it's time for somebody else to come in with some fresh ideas. And then maybe an iteration or two later, I can come back, having thought of some new things and jump in there and do things. I think that Soren and John and the designers that have contributed have brought energy and life to a big part of the reason that Civ has really continued through these iterations, because they've each brought something fresh and new to the game, and it's been appreciated by the players and the fan community.
Some days even Civ gets bored of Civ.
Yeah.
Heresy.
Imperator talked about it was nice to listen to the first episode of Civcast while doing your history essay, and maybe after a certain time, you've been staring at something long enough, something that you've written, something that you have done, something that you've been working on, that you need to step back, leave it, come back, which could also include handing it to someone else and saying, here, what do you think? What works? What doesn't work? What should we add? What should we remove? What should we modify? And you get a collaboration of varying degrees, and the end product is different than you would have had otherwise. And sometimes that is successful. Sometimes that is not successful. Sometimes that success is realized right away. Sometimes it takes time. And other times it remains elusive. I think when it comes to Civilization 4, its book is quote-unquote has been written officially anyway. It's still alive and well in the community.
It is officially awesome.
As far as Civilization 5, the road is still bumpy, but have we reached the end of the road? Hard to say.
Well, there was a recent a patch just released, and in the forum topic, 2K Greg, I think, hints at the possibility of additional content coming soon, or at least he would not outright deny it, and says something along the lines of, well, if we weren't continuing to support the game, then we wouldn't still be releasing patches, wink, wink, hint, hint. So, they might have some new stuff out on the horizon, which I'm looking forward to.
If it's not another DLC, then cool.
Yeah, well, the fact that we haven't had DLC in a long time and that the patches have been, fewer and far between leads me to believe that maybe they are working on a full-fledged expansion, but that's just, complete speculation on my part.
And then, last but not least, one more clip from the interview with Sid and interviewer Adam from Game Informer.
Civ 5 had got a really polarizing reaction, right? Because Civ 4 is so beloved. How do you look at that fan reaction at some of the fan sites, whether it's Polyton or Civ Fanatics or whatever? How do you take that and turn some of that maybe shrill commentary into something useful as a designer?
Well, it's fascinating because our fans feel they own Civilization, which is really gratifying. They're invested in the game and they care about it so much that they're willing to complain. I think, I can make some lemonade out of those lemons. I think it's a sign in one way of how much they really, they're really interested in the game and are invested in the game. Change is essential. We have to keep moving the game forward. Listening to what our fans say is certainly important. We're going to continue to innovate, try new things. Some of them will work really well. Some of them you might not care for quite as much. Civ is a living, breathing entity. We appreciate all the commentary, positive and even negative. To us, it's an indication of how much people care about the game, and we'd rather have a lot of people commenting, some positive, some negative, than nobody commenting about it. And so we'll kind of look on the positive side of that energy.
The only thing worse than being talked about is not being talked about. That's what I thought. That's
just once, I'd like to hear a designer say, "No, actually, we're sick and tired of hearing them whining. Shut up."
That wouldn't be very popular, I'm afraid.
I know, but honestly, I'm sure they have some days in the office where they're face palming at us.
I mean, it's only fair that they face palm at us because we face palm at them, right? I mean, it's give and take.
Yeah, it's quite a bit lately.
From the thread on Civ Fanatics, Hammer Rabbi, he says that it was an interesting interview. I didn't expect any real groundbreaking information from it, though. Nice fluff piece, no more, no less, which, of all the comments in that thread, I would say was the most cynical, but I understand where this individual is coming from. Bit more optimistic comments from Moosezilla. He gave me hope when he being Sid, of course, not the interviewer. He gave me hope when he expressed the problem of what to leave out versus what to put in. Don't leave anything out with the ability to leave parts out ourselves, and we will be happy. And then No KMRIT said the best thing about this interview was realizing that Sid is still around and has a part to play in development. To me, that's the best news I have heard in a long time, and it ties back a little bit from the first clip conversation, including what Lisa had to say, and some people interpreted what was being said a little differently. Like Tatran said, maybe you should listen to it a few more times. He gave mainly vague answers, and I've noticed he's done it in more interviews when he's talking about Civ, so I must conclude he's not participating in the development of any Civ game anymore, and Maniacal agreed. But then Thorne said, you should give a listen to it again, too. He indicated that he has been hands-off the last 2 Civ games. It's almost sounded like he was hinting that it was time to jump back in. Of course, maybe I should listen to it again as well. But he is taking the lead on Civilization World. I mean, the jury is still out on Civ 5, as it were, you could say, but Civ World even more so. I mean, it's still in beta. Don't have any idea how long it's going to be continue to be in beta. But I think I will say, as kind of the one of those comments in the thread that makes you laugh, that I think tries to bring everybody together by not being controversial and actually talking about something that I hadn't even thought about, and something that you would have to actually watch the interview, not just listen to it to appreciate. QEC says, great interview, but why did they sit so far apart? Does one of them have a cold or something?
Ooh, we must not give a cold to the master.
That's just probably a man crush. Get over it.
Okay. I mean, they would be sitting closer
holding
if it was a
hands
man
the whole
crush.
time. They just did special effects to take that out.
I'm not going to try to do a segue here. So we're going to just go on and go into the forum talk. Forum talk is, by the way, when we discuss topics on the forums. And this is about the formula for score in Civ 5. So Silver Futurist posts in Civ Fanatics that, well, he thinks that the formula for score is broken. He posts a couple screenshots and he says there's 4-player Pangea, there's just 2 of us left, but I'm in second even though I'm in first for every demographic. So he was just showing a multiplayer game in which, it seemed like he was going to be the winner, but, the score didn't accurately reflect that. Which led to, a nice discussion on what actually the score consists of. And it turns out that, score is mostly the heaviest, weighted, factor for score is how many wonders you have. So, the multiplier for wonders is actually 25. So for each wonder you get 25 extra points, as opposed to, every tech you have, which only counts for 4 points. Same for each city, counts for 4 points. Each population counts for 4. And each future tech only provides you 10 points. So each wonder you build actually has a huge impact on whether you're ahead in score. But this might not even matter, depending on what kind of game you're playing. Which is exactly why this guy is saying, score is broken.
Oh, so in Civ 4, it was getting a bunch of population that broke the score, and in this game, it's getting all the wonders that breaks the score.
Pretty much.
Population was a better metric, though, because you could only have so much pop in any given city. And, usually your success is better tied to pop in Civ 4 than most other things. Now, there's some land quality issues to take into account there. But generally, the strength of your empire comes from your works tiles and your pop. either in the form of specialists or in the tile yields from the tiles. So it wasn't a bad component. It was maybe overweighted compared to, I don't know, maybe land or tech or whatever else you want to go by. But at the end of the day, it's not a good predictor of who's ultimately going to win the game, but it's a fair predictor of whose position is strongest at a given moment, unless there's a huge tech disparity and that someone has a lower score could milk in the near future. But that's mostly a high-level thing where you're taking advantage of the AI's ineptitude to take away land from them. And that's why score is not a very good indicator in single player. It's not a perfect indicator in Civ 4 multiplayer, but you get a rough idea from it. And it's not perfect, but I don't want to go so far as to say it's broken in Civ 4. And I think Civ 5 just weights the wonders too heavily. It's just straight up weights it too much.
Yeah, I think the big problem is that it kind of creates this sort of thing where you have to metagame instead of just letting things grow naturally, because it puts so much pressure on trying to get wonders, even if you don't need them, because there's a lot of wonders in the game that just won't synergize with your strategy at all and are just a complete waste of time to build. But every one that you don't build gives someone else an opportunity to jump ahead in the score. And I think that's the big problem, is that there's just so much that you don't need, but now you're being pressured to want to try to build them just for endgame score, which might not even end up being relevant. And that, I think, is what the big problem is.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that there's no, your score doesn't get better the earlier in the game. In Civ 4, in Civ 5, it's just, city population, land, wonders, tech, and future tech. So, taking all those together, I mean, yeah, they're okay indication, but, it leads one, just try to make the game, go as long as possible, right? If what you're trying to do is maximize score and you're under this weird assumption that it has something to do with, how likely you are to win. There's no incentive to end the game early, which is, what a skilled Civ player is supposed to do.
Yeah, to me, it's not about the variables that were chosen, it's the weighting of these things.
Was culture or social policies included in the score calculation for Civ 5?
No, they're not.
No.
Not at all?
No. I mean,
I think is definitely an oversight.
Yeah, and that's supposed to be, sort of encompassed in tech, but the tech multiplier is only 4, which is, I think it should be a lot higher, especially when social policies aren't taken into account.
It's indirectly, because that relates back to land area, but, it's still, if they're not counting social policies or completed trees at all, and that's one of the victory conditions, I think that's kind of, not very well thought out.
That's pretty crazy, though. Like, there's an inverse relationship between social policies and land. I don't know. Like, you can't really tie them in that way. I think you need to score them separately. I mean, yeah, you can build enough things where you get pretty good culture income with a huge empire, but that takes time. It can't be effectively weighted together.
I just meant in that both come directly from the culture generated from cities. So the amount of land that you have is usually correlated with the amount of social policies that you have, because they both use the same fuel, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Sort of. It's not that strong. I guess it just doesn't correlate strongly enough.
Well, that's why I said indirect.
Yeah. But tech should definitely be more valuable. I don't know why they picked wonders to be the most valuable. I mean, they might as well have picked something really asinine, like bought tiles. How many tiles did you purchase? That gives you 100 points per tile you purchase. It's so random. Some of the wonders in the game are really, really good. And other wonders are just, they're not useless, but often not worth what you would give up to build them.
Yeah, and like I said before, even the ones that are really good still might not even have anything to do with your long-term strategy, so it is just a waste of time to build them.
Yeah, but you still get the points. I don't think the game could really accurately measure, is it worth your strategy or whatever, but I think it should definitely weight Wonder's score based on their actual value in terms of just how consistently they're worth something really big in gameplay. And yeah, I think Pop should be up there. I think tech has always been underrated as a score item in all Civ games. And that's probably still the case in Civ 5, so maybe buff that up a bit too.
Well, I think that mostly just comes from the fact that tech is so useful for every other component of the game. The further along on the tech tree you are, the more wonders you're going to get, the better units you're going to have, so the more opportunities you're going to have to conquer cities, etc., etc., etc.
I mean,
So represent it in score. I mean, what is your score supposed to do? It's supposed to indicate how well you're doing.
Text scoring overflows into other areas of the game because researching the text gives you the higher population and access to better infrastructure that's going to improve your economy and generate, all those things and give you wonders. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It should be weighted more, but it's sort of an overflow thing.
It's not accurately reflected because the things that give you an advantage from tech, such as the quality of your military, a lot of your city improvements, they don't get scored right away, whereas tech is, and tech gives you the option of doing a number of useful things very quickly once you reach a said tech. It really needs to be not trickling down the score, but represented immediately more strongly. I'm not saying it should be the only component of your score, because it shouldn't be, but it should probably be around how strong wonders are right now. Maybe a little bit weaker than that, not much. It really needs to be the dominant component of score, in my opinion, if you actually want to reflect how well one civ is doing against another.
There's also the issue that depending on what type of victory condition you're going for, if it's not for domination in Civ 5 or conquest or domination in Civilization 4, especially culture, your score, is it really reflecting how well you are doing towards that particular victory condition? And the answer is no.
Well, not if social policies are involved and you're going for a culture victory.
Last place wins.
Score shouldn't be the be-all and end-all. It needs improvement, and yes, you should be comparing other measures as well, but comparative to how important some other information is, such as demographics, for example, which can also mislead, can also cause you to get to make some assumptions and make some decisions based on those assumptions that are not in your best interests. Just looking at score alone, I also started to think about, and this really didn't come up either in the Civ 4 or the Civ 5 thread, but it's almost in which Civ game is score, I don't want to phrase it as better, but it's almost like, so in which game is score a worse reflection of your performance in the game? And I feel like I can't directly answer that only because having played Civilization 4 more, I've tried towards different victory conditions more often as compared to Civ 5 where it's been almost, strictly domination. But in Civilization 4, man, it's bad enough. Looks like it's just as bad, if not worse, in Civilization 5, and that is unfortunate, especially for newer players. Score, as a first measure, you can either be really encouraged or really discouraged, and then you either get a nasty or a pleasant surprise, and it's often you get a nasty surprise. What is also interesting is in looking at the global defines XML between Civilization 5 and Civilization 4, in addition to the multipliers that are measured there, it's interesting when it comes to maximums. Your score, if you have the maximum population possible on the current map, score if you have all of the land on the current map, if you get all of the wonders, if you get all of the text, percentage your score that gets added if you win the game, the amount of score modifier per handicap level, those values are the same between Civilization 4 and Civilization 5. Every single one.
That might have just been a carryover where they just copy-pasted the same file and didn't think to change it.
Yes, and it's that thinking, not thinking to change it, that gives pause. Takes us to another Civ topic. Who knew? This one, we've talked about quote-unquote top Civs in the past for both Civilization 4 and Civilization 5, Civ 5 more recently, of course, and ranking those Civs. And our common emphasis was single player, single player, single player. So it seemed only fair to give the multiplayer, particularly the competitive multiplayer community, some much needed attention in this respect. To regards to the top multiplayer Civs, this thread from civplayers.com, which is home to not just Civilization 5, but Civilization 3 and Civilization 4 multiplayer community, Civilization Players. And what's interesting is that there are 4 people who gave their rankings of the top Civs, only including Mongolia, the free DLC, excluding the other DLC, because
Spain would be at the top of the list.
It really does throw some things off. Plus, this way you know if you have Civilization 5, that just Civilization 5 in and of itself, it's kind of the level playing field, quote-unquote, as it were, as level of a playing field as you can get, I suppose. And most of these 4 individuals who gave the 1 to 19, there was one other person who only did 1 to 7, so that list is incomplete, so I didn't include that. 2 of them gave their reasons for their ranking, which to me is, of course, and I think for anybody reading it and also wanting to understand why you ranked it that way, more interesting, more important, adds credibility to at least the process, even if you don't end up agreeing with these individuals. And so then I thought, why not make this thread even more fun and use a spreadsheet? And
Dan, we need to talk about your ideas of fun.
I only did that for the sighs and groans.
Right.
Yeah, so what I did was I took all the 4 lists, I recorded for myself what each of them said was 1 to 19, and then I took the average and the median for each one, paying only attention to the median.
What?
What?
This is a podcast, Dan, not your work. What are you doing?
Hear me out. The reason I did this was so that we could say, quote unquote, what is the ranking of all of these civs from these 4 individuals from this thread? In other words, what is the Civ players thread ranking as of this recording? And most of the 4 individuals agreed. I'll just quickly go down what that list actually is. Germany was first, followed by France, Japan, Rome, China, Russia, England, Persia, Egypt, Mongolia, so there's your top 10. Then Siam, Greece, the Iroquois, Aztecs, Songhai, America, Arabia, Ottomans, and last, and also least, India. And again, this is from the multiplayer perspective and specifically looking at maps that have no water, or at least water that you cannot enter onto, that you cannot embark on. A lot of the focus seemed to be on the skirmish map, which has been tailored with multiplayer in mind.
The game's not a spreadsheet, or is it? Ha ha! Spreadsheets are awesome. And if you do well, I mean, hey, you bust out the spreadsheet.
Now, you see, I did this actually as a favor, because I was either going to do a median list or I was going to read off each one of the 4 individual rankings instead. So I figured you would prefer listening to one combined list rather than my reading aloud 4.
I see.
So from that perspective, you should be thanking me. Yes, that's right. Groveling can begin now. Go ahead. Let's go.
No. There will be no groveling.
So I looked more specifically at 2 individuals who actually gave comments to their rankings. Builder FTW, the opening poster, as well as Silent Knight 13. I'm just going to go off of the opening poster's comment and the order of their rankings. The ancient era, like this is the era that we are, in fact, starting in, and also taking into account how often competitive multiplayer games last, even as compared to cooperative multiplayer games versus single-player games, which I think, generally speaking, we generally go from shorter games to longer games. Bonus is a pikeman for half the cost, but it is a half-cost unit, twice as many as your opponent.
Also ridiculously cheap to upgrade to.
And no strategic resource required.
Yeah.
How effective is that in Civ 5, if I just ask for a moment? Because I admit to not playing a lot of competitive multiplayer in Civ 5, but it seems like with the 1 unit per tile restriction that you could just get meat ground, potentially, by spamming out the lower strength units. Like if somebody had a good row of swordsmen or something like that, it might be hard to break. I could be wrong about this, however.
Well, I think the benefit more comes
spam
from
that strong.
I think the benefit comes more from, I don't play competitive multiplayer very much either, and not the ranked games like these at all, but I think the benefit comes not from being able to just create a solid line, but the fact that you can replace them significantly more quickly when they get lost. So you just have this constant barrage of melee units attacking their melee units, and eventually you're going to wear them down because you're producing them twice as fast as your opponent can. So unless they have twice as many cities as you do, you end up winning. But I could be wrong.
That is on the operating assumption that you're killing each other's units at equal rates and not feeding the other side too many promotions. But yeah, I guess.
Well, you could focus fire. And if you've got the support from a few, ranged units, that'll help too.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see the advantage. At least in my looking at their statistics, I would not
And
have
then
rated Germany number one for
And then
it,
there's
but it's
also the
certainly an
lower
advantage.
maintenance costs. So Germany can simply afford a larger land army.
Okay.
So the other player might cripple their economy just to keep up.
All right, yeah, now I'm seeing it. I'll take that.
Second on Builder's list is Japan. The Japanese ability makes it very difficult to kill their units because, of course, they fight as though they are a full-strength unit as opposed to what their injured status may, in fact, reflect. Of course, this is on the offense.
Yeah, this is definitely one of the strongest traits for competitive, in my opinion.
Yeah, and competitive in the sense of competitive as in going for a domination victory.
Yeah, going to war, yeah.
Yeah, if you're ruling out all other victories besides military, I actually might even argue that's better than Germany's, simply because, yeah, it's going to be almost impossible for Germany to kill your swordsmen because your swordsmen are going to be mowing through their pikemen. Doesn't matter how many they build.
Third is Rome, very powerful. They have 2 early and effective units. Both are stronger versions of their replacements. And then the plus 25% building bonus is very strong, allowing you to get expansion cities. So, of course, other than your capital, give your expansion cities developed and producing units even faster. And the units being referred to, of course, are the legions and ballistas, the swordsmen and catapult replacements, respectively.
Ballistas. If you thought catapults were fun, ballistas are even more fun.
Fourth is France. Extra culture speeding up liberty. You get a free seller or worker way before everyone else. And you do not even need to build monuments, although you can for super culture. Also, you will finish liberty very fast, allowing for a fast medieval rush.
Yeah, so it's also annoying to have France as your neighbors because they keep eating up all the tiles around you.
Yeah, and they're the first to really finish off any tech policy. I mean, not tech policy, social policy tree, because of the +2 culture that they get for every city.
Number 5, England. No bonus on a skirmish map except longbows, but the longbow makes up for it. Oh, really? If you can get to machinery as England, the opponent is dead. The longbow is like medieval artillery, and with the melee strength at the level of a horseman, there is no good counter unit for it. Good luck getting to it.
Well, I mean, what the thing about the longbows is that you kind of, you have your longbows, but then you need, units to actually attack while, the longbows do their ranged attack. Which, I mean, yeah, they're nice, but you need you
need
to
somebody
kill
up
enemies from
as
far
a
away.
shield.
Yeah.
But the big advantage is you can keep your meat shield out of direct fire, because you can back them up one tile further away from the opponent's front line, which means their ranged units are going to have a harder time even hitting your front line units, while at the same time your ranged units are picking off their front line units.
You need mounted units to be able to go after the longbow. You need to be able to time it just so.
You need to be able to get in their face, and that's not necessarily possible because of their long range.
And unfavorable terrain, too.
You'll probably want to go for chivalry, too, so you can get to the knights, since they have the same melee strength as the horsemen. The horsemen, are going to it's going to be a wash, kind of.
China is 6th. Strong Great General is great. Gives an extra 15% to all units compared to other Great Generals. Also, the Choco Nu is a nasty unit, which does a ton of damage.
I was just about to mention Choco Nu.
I think actually it should be ahead. It should be higher on this list. I don't know. I feel like
the Choco Nu with its double attack thing is a lot more of a pain in the ass than you might think.
I agree. I played a few games as China, and I did not need to build any siege weapons at all. You just surround their city with your crossbows, and that city is going down.
Yeah, and the Great General ability is great. Extra 15% for their special Great General.
On top? Go ahead.
15% combat bonus.
Yeah, I was about to say, on top of that, I don't remember for sure, but I think at the time I was playing, the Chunokus or Chukonu, I keep forgetting how it's pronounced. I'm pretty sure their double attack carried over to when you upgraded them to riflemen.
Oh, I didn't know that. Awesome.
But that might have been changed in one of the recent patches, so I don't know if that's still true or not.
Yeah, that probably would be a smart change. Holy crap, double attack rifle.
I don't think that's changed.
Hasn't?
What?
I know what I'm playing tonight.
Oh, and by the way, if you're playing as England or China, you want to be even more obnoxious? Get the Great Wall. I just wanted to put that out there in your consciousness. Just to groan even more. Number 7, Russia. Extra iron is very powerful. It allows you to build many more iron units, the strong units, than your opponent. Also, Russia gets an extra hammer from strategic resources, an extra hammer on tiles, which is already good. It's great for both your capital, which always has horses and iron, and even greater for expansion cities. And of course, when he says always has horses and iron, he must be referring back to the skirmish map. You know, I think about Russia, and then I think about Germany, because I think about Germany, the lower unit maintenance cost that actually allows you to field more units. When I'm playing as Russia, and again, I'm not, like most people here, not playing competitive multiplayer at all, it sounds nice, and it's also nice in the sense that because of that extra iron and the extra production, you could actually be building right at the outset more iron units. You know, you're thinking, like these five swordsmen are going to do some very good damage, but probably 3 or 4 of them are going to die. So yes, I could build warriors in the interim to then upgrade to more swordsmen, but if I'm Russia, then I've already got this extra that I can draw on. But to me, that means like if I would normally have, 6 iron, but now I have 12 because I'm Russia. Okay, I can have my 6 swordsmen, but I can also be making 6 more swordsmen, which of course I don't have to then worry about the turn to be able to upgrade them to a swordsman. And I know swordsmen take more production time, and yes, it's cheaper to upgrade, blah, 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 blah. It's kind of like there's that balance versus also being able to build all those, cheap pikemen that Germany have. But I think Germany is still better because still with Russia, I'm finding I have so much extra overall, and I'm not about to, sell it to an opponent, especially in competitive MP. So to me, the strength for Russia is not so much that extra iron, but it's that extra hammer. We've talked about the value of the production, especially for your expansion cities.
Well, then the other complicating factor for Russia is, are you going to be able to afford all of the maintenance on all of those extra units that you're planning on building? Which I think is another thing that gives Germany an edge.
I agree with that.
Especially early on when you don't have when your maintenance cap is really low.
And so, yeah, in competitive multiplayer, 1v1 or 2v2, that's not as advantageous, because in single player and on larger multiplayer games, at least you can sell all of those excess horses and iron. But in multiplayer, you can't, because you'd be selling them to your enemy.
Well, of course, you wouldn't want to buy them either, just like you wouldn't want to sell them, because then, you have those units, sure, great. Oh, guess what? You don't have it anymore. 50% combat penalty. Lol. So there's that perspective too, in addition to not getting much gold for it anyway, but in a competitive situation, you would actually be ahead as the seller as opposed to the buyer. But yeah, with Germany, I think like you were saying a little earlier there, Jason, if you're Germany, then you can be building your half-cost pikemen, and then the iron that you have, you don't have to worry about investing it in, say, your 6 iron and swords. You could be complementing those cheaper pikemen with catapults requiring iron. Is that what you were saying, or was I just thinking of something else?
Yeah, something along those lines, yeah. You're paying attention to me, yay!
Number 8, Persia. The Golden Age bonus is very strong if well timed. The extra move on all units allows you to move, set up, fire catapults in one turn. One thing that can make I'll get before the one thing that can make the ability stronger, because that actually gets into a competitive team multiplayer game. The Golden Age, yes, for the gold, but to me, that extra move, and then he doesn't talk about it, but also the combat bonus, which is an extra, 10 or 15%? I forget. It's one or the other. Is very powerful. But then this person starts talking about if Persia is teamed up with a civ that has a strong, unique unit, like Persian war elephants from Siam, which would then have 3 moves, makes them incredibly more powerful.
Yeah, reading that just blew my mind for the first time, because it was something that, reading that for the first time blew my mind, because it was something that I had never even considered doing at all, because I usually focus on single player and don't play multiplayer very often. But yeah, I could see how that would be an amazingly awesome strategy, just gifting the units back and forth.
Egypt at number 9. Wonder bonus is nice for getting the critical wonders. Since there are very many strong, if not overpowered wonders in the game, the bonus will give you the edge to many of them. The Burial Tomb is a very strong building. It provides the happiness of a courthouse along with 2 culture for the same cost of the Colosseum and no maintenance. The Burial Tomb gives a massive boost in happiness, which is a very strong bonus. And I thought more about Egypt actually in terms of their unique building, Not actually to the extent of what he's talking about, the happiness and the courthouse equivalency. But yes, for those key wonders, actually this is where I think more about of a team game, actually, where either you being Egypt or your teammate being Egypt, you can be going after those wonders and getting them sooner, more likely to get them, so that that investment will pay off. Because I do find, just as an aside, that Fail Gold in Civilization 5, I'm not as happy to receive it as Fail Gold in Civilization 4. But anyway, Egypt at number 9. Number 10 is Greece from Builder's List, the Companion Cavalry, a very strong unit. Extra move and extra 2 strength allows you to crush enemy units, and then retreat to safety to heal or attack again. Also, the Hoplite is a strong early counter to opponents' horses.
Does the companion start with the ability to attack multiple times per turn?
No. And number 11, Mongolia. Special Great General allows units to heal outside of friendly territory faster. Great General can also move 5 tiles per turn, of course allowing you to put the General near combat for bonus more easily, the near injured units for healing. Keshiks are absolutely brutal with 5 moves. You can attack without ever being attacked yourself. Sure, move in, move out. Number 12, Siam. They have a very powerful knight replacement. The unit suffers from having 1 less movement than a knight, but still a very strong unit. Aztecs, 13. One of the only civs with all of their bonuses usable in our games. And again, competitive MP. Of course, the Aztecs get extra culture from killed units, which is very helpful. And then talks about the Jaguar Warriors and upgrading into swordsmen. And they keep that bonus versus jungle and moving faster in jungle and forest.
I'm actually really surprised that the Aztecs aren't higher. I kind of think of them as being the Civ equivalent of a Zerg rush, because you just spam out those Jaguars, and you get all the free culture from killing other units, and yeah, it's just like you just pop as many of those out as you possibly can early in the game, and I would think in competitive multiplayer that would be much, much, much harder to deal with, because the other player's just coming right for you.
Number 14, the Iroquois. Strong on a map where iron is scarce, but skirmish maps have lots of iron. The road bonus is nice. It can save you a lot of gold, allowing you to move faster. And then, of course, the Longhouse for all forest tiles, making greater hammer tiles. But then, of course, you can't chop forest tiles. Songhai's Cavalry. I'm not going to try to pronounce that right now. Only bonus is that it has no penalty against cities. While this is nice, it isn't very strong. I like this part of the comment. The extra gold from capturing cities is nice, but you don't capture many cities unless you're already winning. And then talks about the Mud Pyramid Mosque giving you culture, but it comes a little late, but then you probably finished Liberty or pretty darn close. Arabia provides, the Bazaar provides an extra luxury, but because you have no one to sell it to, this bonus goes to waste. I suppose it could come in handy actually in a competitive game where you are on a team, and you could give that extra one to your teammate if they are lack, but that is particularly situational.
Yeah, and that is, of course, assuming that you don't already have 2 sources of the luxury in your territory anyway.
True. America gets +1 site, which could be helpful, but is often obscured by hill and forests. The plus 50% tile purchase cost is not important because it is rarely a good idea to buy tiles. Yeah, have you looked at your score recently? Okay, tie in. Ottomans, really no ability until Gunpowder, where they get a very strong unit, but by then most games are over. And then 19, India essentially gives a penalty for optimal play. The War Elephant is a nice early unit, but does not make up for this penalty. Poor India.
Well, if you can get all your cities up above 6 pop, then I think it does level out, and then it's all just bonus happiness from there. But yeah, getting all of them up to 6 pop is probably not going to be very easy to do.
Happiness in a competitive team game is probably seeing one of your opponents being India.
Although there's an inverse relationship between the quality of the civ you are using and the satisfaction you get in beating somebody with it. So if you want to go in with the cherry tapping approach, there you go.
Phil, always with the cherry tapping.
Cherry tapping is amazing in gaming. And if you're not familiar with the trope, I would look it up, because it's a very amusing thing to do in games, is to use these inferior options so well.
Comments briefly on the downloadable content civs. I'm just going to mention a couple. Mackie already mentioned Spain.
Yes, I would like either 500 or 100 every time I discover a natural wonder. Thanks.
The Incan comment from Builder was interesting. The Incans would be nice, but they come packaged with the Spanish, but otherwise they would be okay. Well, you get Inca and Spain then to get the Inca from their perspective. Because it comes packaged with the Spanish, I don't... It's kind of like, ouch.
I'd like Inca, except they come with the overpowered Spanish.
Well, then just don't play the Spanish. I really... and from Silent Night 13, this was interesting, something that I didn't even think about as much. Because someone asked, what difficulty level do you play on in competitive MP? The difficulty level you play on an MP should be Prince, as it is the normal difficulty setting. The higher difficulty settings, such as Immortal and Deity, just make things harder, like killing barbarians, what the AI starts out with, etc. Those things are really only for single player. Multiplayer doesn't normally play with city-states, barbarians, or ancient ruins.
Hello.
Gerard, welcome to PolyCast episode 140.
Well, thanks for having me. This is really cool.
You said that you had a question that you wanted to ask us, so I'll hand it over to you.
All right. Well, my question was, I'm a long-time Civilization 3 player, and in more recent years I've been playing Civilization 4, and I have not yet touched Civilization 5 with a 10-foot pole, but I was wondering, between all of you guys, between Civilization 3 and Civilization 4, which do you guys prefer?
4, I think, is pretty much going to be the answer.
Yeah, I would say Civilization 4.
Previous episodes, we've had a consensus on 4, and when it comes to that.
I didn't even start playing until Civilization 3, and even then it was like a year before Civilization 4 came out, so I very quickly upgraded. So I don't have enough experience with 3 to really say that I would like it more. There are some things in 3 that I really wish would be brought back, but yeah, Civ 4 is like my favorite game ever, so.
Some things that I do miss about Civilization 3, like, I mean, you know, the advisors, for example, I don't know, I liked it a little bit more personal, like somebody was talking to me. And
Civ 2 advisors, I think, was what you were thinking of with those.
Well, Civ 3 had Sid dressed up as different advisors, except for the trade advisor, which was a lady.
The thing I actually liked,
the same, though.
The thing I actually liked from Civ 3, which I'm sure was probably a very controversial topic and why they removed it, was the way that city sieging works, where whenever you sieged a city, you actually had a risk of destroying the buildings and population that were in it. I thought that was really cool because there was a real risk-reward factor to capturing cities, and you could even destroy
You
wonders.
still do destroy buildings in Civ 4, but it happens as you capture it. What Civ 4 did differently, they really changed the siege mechanic. Well, in addition to changing the way the attack and defense things, I think the way Civ 4 handles attack and defense is better than how Civ 3 does it, but I think we still have a ways to go when it comes to tactical combat in Civ games.
Well,
But,
I just meant
the bombardment was a really interesting element in 3, with especially once you get the cannons.
Yeah, the part that I liked was the bombardment. The other thing that I really liked in 3 was the tourism thing, where when wonders went obsolete, they became tourist attractions. I thought that was really cool, and they just generated butt tons of gold.
Metric butt
As
tons.
opposed to the culture in Civ 4. The siege in Civ 3 got to the point, though, if you had enough of it, even if you were a bit backwards, you could literally just spam anything that got near you to death with just siege, and there really wasn't a good answer for that until a very late game. And that's still true to an extent in Civ 4, but it's less of an issue because of the whole non-ranged thing, and you have to attack with it, and you have collateral damage instead of just spamming the siege attack. But it was still a good element to Civ 3.
The thing that bugs me the most about Civ 4 was how the siege weapons became almost like disposable missiles. They rarely ever survive combat unless you had a lot of promotions on them, or you had a huge tech advantage where you were like an era ahead in siege weapons.
Yeah.
That bugs me a lot.
I think they balanced that poorly, because once you get into cannons and artillery, they do survive pretty consistently if you take City Raider on them, which is very easy to access by them. But catapults and trebs, they die like flies. It's very annoying.
Yeah, like I said,
Civ
they
3
were like
had
missiles.
some aspects, actually quite a few aspects of diplomacy that were better than Civ 4. For example, you could sell a lot more things for gold in Civ 3, and there was some strategy surrounding that. And I think to this day, Civ 3 still has the best model in terms of in terms of doing that. I think it actually is still better than 5, sadly.
And you could,
but also you could sell contacts with other civs.
Yeah, I was about to say that you could introduce other players to each other, which was really neat.
Yeah, access to the, Romans or whatever. That was pretty cool. And
instead of Civ 4 cheating and detecting worst enemy trades magically when they don't know you, you could actually buy contact. So isolated starts weren't such absolute garbage as they are in Civ 4.
That getting contact with civilizations you haven't met yet made its way into Civilization Revolution, but you couldn't sell it. It was just, hey, do you want us to set up a meeting? Okay, and then instantaneous. You've met that person, and it would show you where they are on the map. So we'll kind of hand the question back to you now there. Verard, you've been playing Civilization 3 and Civilization 4. Which do you prefer?
That's tough. Civilization 3 has a lot of interesting intricacies, I think, and Civilization 4 is a really in-depth game, as I always looked at it. It's lots of a lot of math involved, I always thought, in Civ 4. And Civ 3 was kind of more like you could just step back and just, look at the little cartoon guys running around. But between them both, I've always had a fondness for Civ 3, mainly because the map, there's only 2 positions, and, you've got that gigantic black world that you're just exploring. And I always liked the Civ 3 exploring the world better than the Civ 4. So I think between them both, I think I like Civ 3 better. But that's just me personally.
Have you been listening to the show very long?
I've been listening to the show probably since around episode 120. And at first I was like, you know what, hey, maybe I'll just listen to them all from the beginning. But then I realized that they were all an hour long. And I was like, you know what, I'll just start from where they are now. So I've been listening for about 20 episodes or so. And I've really just been enjoying the commentary that you guys have on it.
Thanks again for tuning into the show there, Verard, and for calling into the show.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you all for having me on. I've really enjoyed this.
Have a good one. Keep on sieving.
Yeah, you too. See ya.
Call in today. In North America, the number is 301-637-7659.
That's 301-637-POLY.
In Europe, 44121-288-7659. That's 44121-288-POLY.
The only thing worse than being talked about is not being talked about.
For more information on PolyCast,
our sibling shows Modcast, Revcast, and Turncast,
or about PolyCast in general,
log on to the series' official website at thepolycast.net.
Thanks, everybody, for listening to PolyCast episode 140. This has been Dan, Maki, Phil, and Lisa, and Jason, and we hope you all keep civin' and listen to us again on our next broadcast.
Bye, all.
Bye.
Peace.
War.
What is it good for? Absolutely
More
everything.
War.
You forgot to introduce yourself.
I said on the Mian team, didn't I?
Oh, I don't think so, but maybe.
I'm pretty sure I said it even before the PolyCast episode. So
Okay.
you can't get on my case.
All right, I'm off your case. Okay.
Oh, the joys of live broadcasting.
As soon as I heard that Phil introduced me, I stopped listening.
At this point, just feel really.
We're not
need an
even
introduction.
5 minutes.
Combat animations are coming to multiplayer in Civ 5, so...
We didn't need those.
Why don't you use your time productively? For God's sake.
They are, however, all optional.
Well, he reports that, adding combat animations was widely requested by the fans.
Which ones? We need to talk
I know. I don't know who it was.
Mackie would like to organize an intervention.
That's right.
You wouldn't read out all 4. You won't. You won't. Listeners, I apologize, but I have to say it.
Challenge accepted.
Yes, someone said it. Hey, just out of curiosity, do you know offhand what the Senate represents?
Yes, the Senate represents the state. The state as a whole.
No, for PolyCast.
I thought this was a knowledge test to see if I'm just a dumb teenager or something like that.
No.
He says,
Oh, bless you. Sorry.
Gesundheit.
Okay, not get my headset off fast enough.
Blooper.
Record date February 11th, 2012. Civilization 4, 5, and World Sound Clips, copyright Take-Two Interactive. Sid Meier interview clips, copyright Game Informer. Civilization 1 music clips, copyright Microprose. Copyright Civilized Communication at civcom.net.